All right, well, welcome to lesson number 2 in home life. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about blended family, and before you say, well, hey, I don't have any issues with blended family, we're also going to be dealing with the pitfalls of parenting. You don't have to be a blended family to have these same pitfalls that we're going to be going through. We just see these pitfalls more often in blended families. So we want to make sure that we teach, and I want to make sure that as we walk through this lesson of blended family, that it's also dealing with parenting and the pitfalls to parenting. So let me first define what blended family is. A blended family is created when you or your spouse form a new family unit with one or both of you having children from a previous relationship. So we live in a world where there's a divorce factor of 50% of marriages end in divorce. So there is so many blended families. And so now Barbara and I, we've only been married to each other. However, because our parents have been divorced, she has other siblings from other parents, so she has a very blended family there. I have a blended family. My parents were divorced. So most of us are in some way connected to blended family. Maybe not with the children aspect of it, but we've gone through divorce, or parents have been divorced, or grandparents, or somewhere along the way we've seen this idea of blended. So what I want to do, and here's the thing, is that it's not always divorce. Blended families also includes adopted children. So Barbara and I have 3 biological children. We adopted 4. This is also foster care. It also is grandchildren. So sometimes there are grandparents raising grandchildren, or siblings raising siblings. And so we have all different kinds. It's when there's anything that the biblical authority, the perfect umbrella model of authority that we looked at last week, anytime that's disrupted, anytime that authority has been broken in one of the chains, then you have something that's blended. So then you broke the original perfect model. Now we have something kind of thrown into this. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So first I'm going to go over the 4 pitfalls, the 4 common pitfalls of blended families. This is not just blended families, but this is what we see most in that. You can have a normal, absolutely non-blended family and still struggling with this. But the first one is this: breaking the biblical model. Is really what it is. Breaking the mold stands for breaking the biblical model. The moment we break that biblical model, the moment that the woman is leading the house, leading the home, and the man is subservient to her, anytime we break the model, there's going to be things that happen because of that. Playing favorites. You don't have to have a blended family or have adopted children to play the favorites game. Inconsistent discipline or imbalanced correction is a part of the third aspect of it, in a negative atmosphere. And a lot of times, one often leads to another, or is the result of one. So one happens, we break the mold, then we begin to play favorites, and then we have inconsistent discipline, and then so you can see how that happens. But confusion in the home leads to chaos. And confusion comes typically from a lack of structure. So what happens is we have a married couple who doesn't have the proper structure, and the kids are not falling under any kind of structure because there is no structure, or an inconsistent structure, and therefore now there's a lack of identity. So let me show you 4 areas as we look at breaking the biblical model. Here are 4 things that kind of pop out of this. A blended hierarchy is one. The one that we see in the yellow, the top corner over here. Blended hierarchy. So it's a lot of times we see this, especially when 2 people get married and they have children. They're bringing children into the new marriage. And what happens is the father says, well, these are my kids. And she says, well, these are my kids. And so what happens is you have this direct division. It's blended hierarchy. She says, I'll parent my kids, you parent your kids, I'll worry about mine, you worry about yours. Well, now you're completely broken and there is nothing biblical there. And this happens all the time. This happens so often. You worry about yours and all. This is the reason why after you get a divorce, there's a 50% divorce rate, but yet there's even a 50% higher chance to divorce the next time. So you're at like 75% chance of being divorced after you've been divorced once. So most second marriages fail, and this is the number one reason why. You deal with yours, you deal with mine. The moment the two becoming one, that's biblical. The two become one. Well, this is not allowing oneness. This is saying you got yours, I got mine. That'll never work. It never works. The next one that we see is down here in this corner, inverted hierarchy. That means hierarchy is authority. So the father deals with his kids, blended, and she deals with hers. They're separate from each other. Inverted is where the child actually is created to where they almost run the show. The kid says no, and the parent says okay. The child becomes the one making the decisions. This is inverted. This is when the child is the one that has the authority because the parent does whatever the kid wants. And this happens in this culture today. We're seeing this more and more and more and more and more. The child throwing a fit, the parent gives in. The child says no, and the parent says fine. The child argues and argues and argues and wears you down, and then the parent says yes. This is inverted. This is backwards. This is upside down. But we do it and we allow it. And then we wonder why our family is falling apart because you got your kids in charge and they don't know what they're doing. They are on the bottom of the hierarchy. They have zero authority and you give them all authority. And here's what happens is this inverted hierarchy doesn't happen necessarily all the time. It's not a 24/7, but what happens is every time they throw a fit, you give in. Well, what you've done is you've given them authority, and they figure out, well, if I throw a big enough fit, and if I throw a fit at the store, mom's going to give in, or dad's going to give in. Or if I argue long enough, or if I pout, or if I cry, or if I stomp out. And these children try to figure out ways to manipulate you, and then you give them the authority to do what they want. Now, the horizontal is everyone's equal. Husbands, there's no one above the other. Horizontal hierarchy. Everyone's on a playing field. Everyone's our equals. We're all equals. That one doesn't work either. A child is a child. And the Bible directly says that the husband is the head of the home. He can't be on the same hierarchy as the wife, and can't be on the same hierarchy as of the child if you're going to have a biblical home. And that's what this is about, building a biblical foundation. Why? Because it works. You don't even have to believe in God to make it work, but the thing is you can't have two heads. The husband and the wife can't both be the head of the family. It will always find division. And the moment you allow children to have authority in the house, it falls apart. And then we finally come to the other one, chaos, where there's no hierarchy at all. You have home parents, bio children, new spouse, step parents, ex-spouse, stepchild, everything's thrown in. And here's what happens so often. Somebody gets married, they have divorce, they have split custody, and then the one parent is afraid to do what they need to do, because if they make the child mad, then the child is going to be allowed to go over to so the mom says, hey, I need this kid to stop acting like a fool, so I'm going to discipline. You're grounded. I'm taking your video games. And the kid throws a fit and tells the dad. The dad says, why don't you just come stay with me? So then what happens is you have the bio parents. They're not on the same page. They divorced. And so now no one's in charge because everyone is undermining the other. When you do this, you are ruining your kids. So you got to figure out a way to sit down with your ex-spouse and say, you and me, we didn't work out. We're not married any longer, but we got to figure out a plan to make this work. I need to back you up when you're getting on to the kids, and you've got to back me up. Or our kids are the ones. And here's what happens. In all these blended families, and when there's chaos ensuing because no one is backing each other up, you know who loses? It's not the wife. It's not the ex-husband. It's not those. The children are the ones losing because they are becoming brats and spoiled, and they're manipulating you, and you're letting it happen. And this happens so much. The kid can live with whoever they want because it's a battle between the exes. Ex-husband, ex-wife, they can't stand each other. They got divorced, and now the kid is using each one. Whoever gives me what I want, that's the one I'm going to live with. Instead of that parenting saying, you know what? You're going to stay with your mother, and you're going to obey your mother, or I'm going to whoop you too. I'm going to let her whip you, and I'm going to whip you. What happens is these children learn how to manipulate because they're learning it from their manipulating parents. Manipulation is a learned behavior they learn from you. See, this first pitfall is breaking the biblical mold. Children cannot be equals, and children cannot make their own decisions because they're children. This is what it looks like. Remember, the husband, the father. The husband is the head of the wife. Father is the head of the children. And children are to obey their parents. This is what it looks like biblically. The head of every man is Christ. Don't forget that. And the head of every woman is the man. And the head of Christ is God. That's 1 Corinthians 11:13. Don't forget the scripture. Children will leave your home to start their own. Their own! But your home is not their authority. You are the authority in your home. Your home is not their future home. They're going to leave the nest and build their own nest. This is my home you're living in. One day you will have your own. That's something my kids I have learned. Yes, you can stay with me. When your life falls apart and it's upside down and you're 25 and you're like, Dad, I lost everything. I don't know what to do. Come to my home. But it's not your home. You're going to have your own. You're going to have to come, get things figured out, get your finances in order, get your life in order, and then you got to go out and try it again. Go get your own. Go get your own home. You're going to leave your parents to make your own home. So my children are not the authority at all in my home. They get their own later. Now, the second pitfall is playing favorites, showing partiality. How do you love each child the same? I want you to see that. How do you love each child the same? We want to try to figure out how we do that, but here's the reality: you don't, and you can't. You don't love each child the same. You love every child. You have a sacrificial love for every child, but that's not all the same. Every child is different. Well, Daniel, that doesn't sound right. No, love and favoritism are two separate things. And here's the deal is I have had a really healthy conversation with my adopted children. One of the children said, Dad, I don't feel like you love us the same. And I said, honey, I don't. I love you. I will die for you. I will do anything I can for you. I said, I said, is this not fair? No, it's not fair. Okay. Well, let's talk about it. So what I did is I sat my children down and I said, how long have you been under my roof? When did you come to me? Well, you became my dad 5 years ago. And I said, okay, 5 years ago I became your dad. Okay? So you and I have 5 years of a relationship that we're building. Now, my oldest daughter is 16. How many years has she been building a relationship with me? Well, like 16 years. Yeah, 16 years. So is it fair to a daughter who's invested in my life and I've invested in her 16 years to say, I'm sorry, I have to cut 11 years of you away so that I can make it equal or make it fair. And all of a sudden, the light came on. Like, oh, I get it. I don't love you less. I love you differently. You have to realize that you have 5 years. We're 5 years invested. That's 16. It's not fair to go to her and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm cutting 11 years off so that we can all be on the same playing field. That's not fair either way. So here's the thing, is it's not about fair. It's about love. I love you. I love you with an agape love, an unconditional love. No matter what you do wrong, I'm still going to love you the same. No matter what you do right, I'm going to love you the same because that's what love is. But you're different. So the Bible, though, does talk about favoritism. Brothers and sisters, believers in the glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not, it's a command, must not show favoritism. Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing gold and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat, but say to the poor man, you stand over here or sit on the floor, but you have not discriminated have you not discriminated amongst yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? And here's the word favoritism. It literally means receiving the face. You make a judgment, oh, you have money, or you are of power, you are of significance. I'm holding you to a higher place than I'm holding someone else. That's favoritism. When you're saying, hey, I'm putting you up here, and because you're up here, I'm making a judgment of who's better. Who's better and who's different is different. So understand those two major distinctions. So receiving the face, which is to make judgments and distinctions based on external considerations, as example, physical appearance or money or popularity or power. So if you show favoritism, you sin. That's very consistent. If you are, hey, you're cuter, so I like you more. You're popular, I like you more. That is favoritism. And that is a sin. All right? James 1:9 says it. Now, the third level that we're going to talk about is inconsistent correction. One of the things that my dad taught me early on when I became a father was whatever you do, be consistent. Be consistent. If you say, I'm going to spank you, then you spank them when they do it again. You don't go, hey, I'm going to spank you. You better stop it. I'm going to spank you. You better stop it. I'm going to spank you. You don't make empty threats. If you say you're going to spank them, spank them. If you say I'm going to ground you, you ground them. And you don't keep being inconsistent, because what happens in most families is the parents are inconsistent and the child has no clue what to expect. One time they get a spanking for it. Sometimes they get grounded. Sometimes they get yelled at. So they have no consistency. But guess what? The world we live in is consistent. If you speed, you get caught, you get tickets. They don't one time throw you in jail and the next time scream at you and throw you in a ditch. Same rules and consequences for all children's, no exceptions. When you have the no exceptions, you don't play favorites. You get grounded, you're grounded. Structure is the name of the game. Kids actually want structure. They fight against structure, but they really deep down inside thrive when there's structure in their lives. So consistency and structure. Here's Proverbs 13:24. Whoever spares the rod hates their children. Woo, come on. Like, Daniel, I don't spank my kids. Well, you should. The one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. The spanking is not the only way, but what he's saying is you need to have some strict structure. There needs to be punishment that comes along with bad behavior. Remember the authority that we learned last week? We talked about that authority last week. One who enforces what? Obedience. Discipline enforces obedience. We're building on what we built on last week. So this foundation, we have it, the authority. Now I need to make sure that I ensure obedience. When they are disobedient, correction steps in. Start children off in the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. Proverbs 22:16. A couple verses later, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of discipline will remove it far from them. It's saying this: children are foolish. We all know it. If you have any children, if you've ever had children, children are foolish. How do we remove the foolishness from them? Discipline and correction. Consistent discipline and correction. And let me just say this, yelling is not correction. It's the worst form of correction that we could do. It is much healthier for a kid if you were to be calm and say the discipline is a spanking, you're going to have to go to your room and I'm going to spank you, than yelling and screaming so that you don't have to spank them. That's called verbal abuse. It's not physical. You know what the difference between physical abuse and spanking? It's in the manner in which you do it. I can spank a child with the same tool, a belt. I use a belt. It comes off, belt. And if I'm doing the spanking in anger, and they look back and they see my face, and I'm angry, and I'm yelling at them and spanking them, that's abuse. When spanking my child hurts me more than it hurts them, that's correction. That's discipline. Do not hold back discipline from child. Although you strike him with the rod, he will not die. You shall strike him with the rod and rescue his soul from Sheol. Sheol's a nice word for hell. When you don't discipline your children, they're on a path, they're on a foolish path, and foolish paths lead to hell. He's saying, whoop those kids. Correct those kids. Discipline those kids. In the same way, train the kids in the way they should go. Raise them up. Train them right. Now, the fourth pitfall that we are going to talk about today, and the last one, is negative atmosphere. Expression of criticism and pessimism about something. So this negativity is so quickly to come. So here's what the negative atmosphere is full of. Complaining, criticizing, degrading, belittling, condemning, dismissing, depreciating, trivializing. What happens is this negative atmosphere is when we build this just negativity and we lay that over our children, and then we wonder why they're negative or why they're not doing good. It's because we're not doing good. So we don't do this to our spouses, we don't do this to our children. And we don't do this to our ex-spouses. There is nothing worse in a blended family when one of the parents is belittling their ex-spouse to the biological children. In fact, if you do this, you will lose respect of your children. They'll see through it. They may follow it along for a little bit, but one day they will lose respect for you because of how you belittled your ex. The Bible says in Ephesians 4:29, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up, according to their needs, that it may benefit. So is the words that you're saying, is it a benefit to your children? Is it a benefit to your spouse? Is it a benefit for your stepkids? Is it a benefit to your ex-spouse? Is your words wholesome or unwholesome? You only have the two choices. If do not let any unwholesome, the other word really for this in the Greek is rotten. Like bad breath, rotten talk. Only the things that, if you can't say something nice, then don't say anything at all. That's really the easiest way to go. Proverbs 11:12, whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. There are times that you can't say something nice about somebody. Don't say anything at all. 1 Peter, so put away all malice, all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, all slander. That's when you talk about somebody else. Like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up into salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. So here's our application for this week. Okay, here we go. Do not be hearers of the word, but do what it says, James 1:22. So 1, live the biblical model. Husband with wife, make the plan together, communicate it. Hey, honey, I think that, so what I do is I take lead. I'm the leader. Honey, I think that this is how we should, when they break. So here's the deal. If you lie, you are grounded for 2 weeks. Or it's a spanking, depending on their age. Okay? So that's just a factor of it. Okay? So if you steal, stealing is a form of lying. It falls underneath that. So if you are on your phone, so we have a rule that you can't be on your phones after 10 o'clock. If you're caught on your phone after 10, that could be 10:05. You lose your phone for the next day. If you're caught speeding, you can lose your car. Not always. That one would be the one where we give you a warning. And we've actually started doing something new. If you're caught speeding, you're going to pay us $10 for every time. And we have an app, so they get caught by the app. So when their phone surpasses a speed, it sends it to us. So we're like, oh, you're speeding on 65. This is how fast you. So depending on how fast they were going, how much money, so they have to pay for it, like a ticket. Trying to teach them those things. If they decide that, hey, I'm going to be out with my boyfriend past curfew, or I'm going to go somewhere where we didn't agree to, then they're just grounded from their boyfriend. So we try to make the discipline connected to the crime, to the disobedience. But we have a plan together. Secondly, make the boundaries, the rules, the boundaries very clear and the consequences very clear. Everything needs to be clear. My kids know. You get to go up to them and say, hey, what happens if you're caught on your phone past 10? Yeah, we lose it for the next day. What happens if you lie? Oh, I'm grounded for 2 weeks. It doesn't matter how small the lie is. It could be something dumb, and most of the time it is. Do not make them up as you go. Now, and I don't change the consequences on the fly. So what happens is I'm like, oh, hey, we need to sit down and create a new rule. So we sit down. We have family meetings. Everybody's sitting down at the table. Here's the new boundary, guys. I've been seeing this happen, so here's the deal. We're not going to be on our phones, for more than 2.5 hours a day. We don't need that much FaceTime. So, screen time. And so, so we create that, but we don't just do it on the fly. We don't say, hey, I don't like that, so you're grounded. No, it's like, okay, all right. Well, we're going to change that. We're going to all sit down and we're going to change that. So don't, because then it's exasperating the children all over again, like we learned last week. Can't exasperate them. You can't keep changing things. You can change things, but they have to understand the change before you discipline it. Okay? Number 3, discipline is simply the consequences of a negative action. Discipline does not require your anger. I can be disappointed. I can be frustrated. I don't have to be yelling. One of the things that I have been working so hard on in my parenting is coming to this place of saying, okay, you did this. Here are the consequences. Give me your keys. Give me your phone. I love you, kid, but we're not doing that. Nope, this is not how we behave. Thank you. You know the rules. And that's how it needs to be. I think what we do is we feel like we have to yell at them. No, we don't. They know. They know what they did. They're getting the consequences of what they did. Just like when I get pulled over by a cop, I don't need to be yelled at, just write me the ticket. If I broke the law, write me the ticket. It's fine, write me the ticket. Do what your job is. Don't yell at me. And definitely don't yell at me and write me a ticket. You see what we often do when we do that? So I don't need to outburst, I just need to give them the consequences. Treat everyone the same. Do to others as you'd have them do unto you. So in this, everyone, regular child, stepchild, foster child, does not matter. Consequences are all the same. Everybody gets treated equally. Everybody. So I'm not going to say, hey, because you're an adopted child, you're grounded for 2 weeks, and because you're my biological child, you're grounded 1 week. Nope. If this is the consequences, this is the consequence. The last one, encourage. Encourage, encourage, encourage. Build up your family. Speak words of life. Like, one of the things that I want to do all the time is like, I'm proud of you. That was good. Build up the positive things. Yes, you have to correct the negative. When they do something wrong, you have to correct that. Hey, that was not respectful. That was not good. You shouldn't have stole. You shouldn't have lied. You shouldn't have done that. Then turn around and, hey, you told the truth. I'm proud of you. Good job. Wow, look what you did on your test. That's a good job. And build people up. So you can't, if all you do is break them down, if the only thing that you see in your children's and families and husbands and wives, if all you can see in the other people in your home is what they do wrong, then you need to open up your eyes and maybe correct yourself a little bit. Speak Words of life. I am proud of you. You did great. I love you. Even when I spank my children, I tell them, I love you. I'm sorry that I have to spank you, but I want you to know I love you. And I'm disappointed in this moment. I'm disappointed with what you did, but I'm proud of the person you're becoming. This moment was a bad moment, but it's a moment in the midst of many good moments. Build up your family. Well, that's all the time we have together today for this second lesson. I hope that it's helpful to you, and I hope that you're able to build some things with this. So guys, God bless you, and we'll see you next week.